What's up, YouTube? It's Logan, the drunken metalhead who muses, and it's midday on a Saturday, so thankfully I am not drunk. I just cracked open my first beer of the day, though, and wanted to take the chance to maybe launch a new series. And this is kind of what I would say is like the whole purpose of this channel in the first place, is just to pair good beer with good metal. So for the first pairing, I'm inspired by a recent stream on the Heavy Metallurgy channel, where last night Alan, Marty, and guest Aaron, the metal theologian, essentially talked about the new wave of British heavy metal, and we're really trying to narrow down the releases and albums of the scene to the ones that actually captured that new wave of British heavy metal sound and are also actually good. So it was a fun stream. Cheers to those guys, and I definitely recommend go watch it. I'll link it below. But no, in the lead up to the stream, I of course handpicked a couple albums, that I thought would be eligible, to be featured. And I, of course, was sitting there watching the stream. I had my albums next to me, and I was like, God, I can't wait till this album gets talked about, or this one gets talked about, and, gets the respect and appreciation that I know it deserves, because I know exactly all about the new wave of British heavy metal, uh, as a 29-year-old North Carolinian. So some albums, they went as I expected, like this album right here that's currently playing in the background, Lightning to the Nations by Diamond Head. It was received warmly, and when it was one of the first albums that was put at the top of the definitive new wave of British heavy metal list. Another album, though, that I was holding on to and was like extremely excited to hear them talk about, and one that I feel like is kind of underrated in the scene, did not get the same treatment. And I'm talking about Demons, The Unexpected Guest. It was mentioned and it was put on a list, but it was put on the list of bands that were from the scene, were a part of the scene, but didn't actually, contribute an album that meshed with what the scene was at its core, And my initial gut reaction to that was like, what? It's from Britain, 1982 when this album came out. This should be a new wave of British heavy metal album, and it prompted me to listen to it today, and kind of to want to talk about it and to want to give it a rating and drink a beer. So I don't know. Let's get into it. So first, of course, the beer. To go with this British classic from 1982, I'm going with a British classic and a standard in beer. I'm talking about Samuel Smith's take on an Oatmeal Stout. So Samuel Smith, probably one of the oldest breweries from the United Kingdom. 1758 is when they started, and this is probably one of the oldest styles. Similar to how new wave of British heavy metal, oldest style of metal, period. So to me, it was a no-brainer, and I'd say this beer specifically pairs just with the new wave of British heavy metal music in general versus this album. Though, I mean, they still go great together. So, cheers. As far as oatmeal stouts go, this one's definitely up there. Smooth, somehow not too heavy for a stout. So while I was initially ready to disagree and contradict what was said on the metallurgy stream, after listening to the album, I agree with Alan and Aaron, this is not a album that you would go for the sound of, NWOBHM, if you will. I mean, if you were to show someone an album and be like, this is NWOBHM, I mean, Wheels of Steel by Saxon, the one I just showed, Lightning to the Nations, I mean, those are your picks. This is just such a distinct sound, And I think that was one of the bigger takeaways from the stream yesterday, is that New Wave of British Heavy Metal really focuses on that working class, biker bar, heavy metal bruiser kind of sound. In comparison to that classic sound, this album just is not it. I mean, to me, it's entirely unique in the scene, and is really a special album from this time period because of the unique influences that are only found here and nowhere else in the NWOBHM scene. I mean, what do you hear on The Unexpected Guest? It's very poppy, very chorus driven. All the songs, they center around these big climactic and hooky choruses. It also takes inspiration from a very different scene of the 80s, It's a lot poppier. All the songs are a lot more mid-paced. There's keyboards and synths, and very much a focus on melody. The guitar playing is also a lot bluesier, Really, the big focal point of the album is the vocals and the lead guitar, which I want to highlight Dave Hill for vocals, and then Mal Spooner for that bluesy leads that come in on many different songs, sometimes right out the gate, and really it makes songs more memorable and the album more memorable as well. Same with the vocals. Dave Hill's got more of a mid-register vocal range that is really kind of powerful, but lends to the power of the choruses. Also, another quick note: what is up with this album cover? It's like a bodybuilder's pecs got possessed by a demon and is trying to yell at somebody or something like that. Not one of the strongest of the scene, but still memorable, and it fits the music, so not the worst either. The tone of the album is also, I think, a little different, and it definitely comes off a little bit more mature than probably the contemporaries of the scene, It's a lot more focused on the occult, and lyrically, I'm pretty sure there's a loose concept tying everything together with the concept of possession and exorcism, and just a certain level of spirituality that I don't think was touched on by the contemporaries of the scene, if you will. So now to kind of get into the songs of this album, it opens strong with the first three tracks. Don't Break the Circle being second best song on the album. A chorus that lives in my head rent-free. Popularized probably by Blind Guardian with their cover on, I believe, Follow the Blind. That's actually how I first heard this band, so thank you, Blind Guardian. But Don't Break the Circle, amazing song. The Spell and Total Possession continue the momentum and really follow up with some great choruses too, especially Total Possession. I know both are more mid-paced hard rockers as well. And then going to side 2, Strange Institution, that's the best song on the album. That bluesy guitar takes center stage and is exceptional on that song. The Grand Illusion is back to that strong hard rocker, and just super memorable chorus once again. And it ends well with Deliver Us from Evil, which, great chorus too. It's now stuck in my head, and just amazing. There are definitely some drawbacks to the album, though. Specifically, the more pop nature of some of the songs. Some of the choices in songwriting make you scratch your head, and you're like, "Wait, what the fuck am I listening to? What scene did this come from?" "Victim of Fortune" sounds like it could have been written by Boston in parts. I mean, it sounds like "Don't Look Back," especially in some of the verses and in the beginning of the song. And then "Have We Been Here Before?" Straight up pop song, and oddly upbeat, which doesn't necessarily fit the rest of the album. Still a great song, mind you. Still a great song, but it kind of sticks out a little bit. Also, it's a little guilty of being one song too long, Towards into the second half, you start kind of getting, not tired, but like you're looking at the track listing being like, all right, how many more do I have to go? And it kind of happens on Beyond the Gates of Hell. That's when I get that thought. So I feel like if that song was removed, the overall flow of the album could have been helped, And not to say it's not a good song. It is. It just comes off a little flat compared to the just amazing songwriting found elsewhere on the album, That being said, it's still a great, underrated album that's unique in the scene because of the sound itself, and also because of the loose concept tying it all together. I mean, I don't think any other bands were making albums like that in 1982. So, for me, it gets an 8.5 out of 10. Fucking awesome album, and one that I revisit often. One kind of final question, like, how does it fit into the scene? Truthfully, it doesn't, and I think Alan and Metal Theologian had it right yesterday, putting it into that column of bands that are from the scene but aren't of the sound of NWOBHM. And I think because of that, that's why they've ended up kind of getting lost in the shuffle, if you will. When you're thinking of the scene, you're thinking of something a little more fast-paced, a little, grittier than this. I mean, that's why bands like Saxon and, kind of Motorhead, Diamond Head, those are the first bands that come to mind when thinking about it. And then if you zoom out past the scene, like years 1983, 84, metal as a whole left this behind. This is definitely guilty of being too dark and the wrong lyrics and themes for pop music, but then too poppy and chorus driven for heavy metal, and especially where heavy metal ended up heading in the rest of the decade, for the 80s, when it just became an arms race to be more extreme and faster than everyone else. There was definitely no space for Demon in that world. So, as a consequence, it got left behind. But I'm here to highlight it, here to talk about it, here to have a good beer while listening to it. So, thank you for watching. Cheers to you. Drink good beer. Listen to good metal.